Hello there, everybody. This is Evolutionary Economics, Evolution for me in the chat, and today I have something very special for everyone. Personal fan-made mini marketing Monday. And today I'm going to be talking about something that I think is a pretty cool idea, and that is using worker cooperatives as monopoly breakers, a do-it-yourself tutorial. And as you can see down here, and quite boldly, a new way to organize labor in the 21st century. Now, the facts of monopolies, and I don't think I have to explain this too in depth because, well, for this audience, everyone knows what it is. But just so that we're all on the same page, let's go over it. Monopolies kind of are the drain on society. They're kind of the reason why everything's so bad these days. First, they screw people upstream the supply chain by saying, "Oh, we're the only ones you can sell to, so we're gonna absolutely lowball you and get you the lowest prices possible and screw you over. And you don't have anywhere else to sell, so you gotta sell to us." They screw over their workers, which means when workers try to, individually or even as a union, try to get better wages and benefits, the monopoly can say, "Oh, you want more money? Well, I'm just gonna fire you then, because I'm the only person in town that can give you a job. So I'll just take someone else in from the street and replace you." And giving them pretty much total control over their own individual labor market, and they can basically set the rules and say, "I'll be grateful for what we give you." And then for people downstream, either other businesses or consumers, they can say, "Hey, you got nowhere else to buy, so you got to buy from us," which means they can jack up the price as high as possible. And they also are not actually efficient, because why would you invest into R&D, into making a better, higher quality product, when you can just sit there and sell the same old thing or a worse product, because that saves you money, and just print money. So they're bad for people upstream, they are bad for workers, they are bad for consumers and businesses downstream, and they're bad for the economy writ large because they don't innovate, they are incentivized to in fact make worse products at higher prices, and that's good for no one. And that means monopolies have a lot of enemies, a lot of people who would love to see them be broken apart. Keep that in mind. Second, I've provided this little visualization to help help you guys understand it. This is economies without monopolies. You can see the water is freely flowing. You can imagine like going it through a pipe. The more water flows through, the stronger, the better. And then economies with monopolies. The water is still stopped to a trickle, and that means, well, there's probably a lot of grime, a lot of dirt in the pipes that's clogging it all up, and that's what the monopolies are. They're a bunch of dirt, grime in the economies. They ain't no good for nobody. Now, what exactly is a worker cooperative? And there's one that in the news recently that this community might have heard about, and that is off-brand. Specifically, Al went kaput. And I obviously know as much as you guys about the whole off-brand situation. It's crazy. But, yeah. From my understanding, it is not so much that it was a worker cooperative that it failed. It was because of its conceptual idea of what it was going to be and what market it was trying to sell to. AKA, they basically had to create their own demand. Ludwig basically had to provide all the services and be the person doing all the events for off-brand productions, and that, after a while, obviously failed, combined with Ludwig's infamous ability to just get scammed over and over again, meant that off-brand productions failed. But off-brand games, it is just fine, because it has an established market, the, multi-billion video games market, and therefore it has easy access to that market through a whole bunch of stuff, and it can sell a product. It doesn't have to create its own demand, so hopefully they'll be fine. But I do want to dispel a bit of misconception, because most of you who do know what worker cooperatives are know that they are usually small, like one building, maybe like less than 25 worker establishments, right? That is not necessarily the case, because there is an obvious example, quite famous in the world of worker cooperatives, that you might not know about, and that is the Mondragon Corporation in the Basque region of Spain. Now, I know, talking about Europeans and their, better standards of living or whatever, but in this case, they kinda have one up on us, because Mondragon is not just one cooperative; it is a federation of cooperatives that is quite big. And I want you to just briefly for a moment imagine what their total, assets are, their total net worth. Like, is it maybe a million, maybe 10 million, maybe 100 million even, and be a quite big company? Well, you would be a couple order of magnitude short because they actually have over 25 billion euros in assets. That's billion with a B, ladies and gentlemen. And just some, fun facts. All members of this business are both workers and owners of this business. And since they have no outside shareholders, all of the money that they make, 100% of it goes to the workers. And I'll highlight how that works in just a second. And it means they both own and operate their businesses. And if they solve the problem of, well, everyone's an owner, how are we going to, do stuff? They have not just individual workplace democracies where the workers, they vote for how to run the business, how to operate it, and how to do everything, but they have somewhat of a full-on industrial democracy where individual cooperatives, well, there's the workers inside the cooperatives, owning and operating it, but the cooperatives themselves provide, mutual support and aid to each other, and investment into each other, which helps the whole cooperative federation as a whole grow and grow and grow and grow and grow. Now, Mondragon came about as a specific result of the Spanish Civil War, so to replicate its conditions here in the States would be tricky. But if those stinky Europors can figure this shit out, then we Americans can do it at least 10 times better. The only problem is getting the ball rolling, and we'll get back to that in just a second. Because real quick, I gotta do a bit of drawing for y'all, and that comes in the form of what I think worker cooperatives do that's really, really, really good about our whole economic system, capitalism, if you will. Because, at least for me, I do not have problems with 99% of capitalism. This part, capitalism, free market, banks, free enterprise, free association, I don't really have a problem. There's probably rooms for reforms. But my main irk is this 1%, if you will. And that has to do with how capitalism is able to generate humongous, absolutely enormous amounts of wealth. Just so much money. Like from 2020 to 2024, we generated something like 12 billion or something. Like ridiculous, not 12 billion, but probably way, 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 way more than that. And we grew the economy so much. The only problem is that the average everyday person did not get that money because, and I'm pretty sure this is accurate, I remember seeing this statistic a couple years ago, and it's still true now, where 60% of the wealth of this country is controlled by the top 1%. The 35% of it is controlled by the top 9%. That's doctors, lawyers, and other such. And then the remaining 5% here is controlled, and this is total net worth, total assets, not net worth, so assets, so what you own, is controlled by the 90%. Even though it is these two here combined that produce 100% of the wealth. They're the ones who work in, well, businesses. They're the ones who make a good, provide a service, who buy everything, and these people are the sole reason this economy works at all. And yet 60% of the wealth, it's probably up to even higher these days, is controlled by 1% of the population, who I'm of the opinion of that they do not. And so worker cooperatives do something very, 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 very special, because as was shown in the last slide, we know they can work. They can work at scale, at an industrial scale, worth billions of dollars. So we know that they can work. And again, if the Euros can work it out, we can work it out and do it better. So that means when we compare how they are formed and operated, there's something very, 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 very special I want to show you. So in a typical firm, you have the boss, who then has a manager that he pays, and then there's 4 workers, for example, here, that he has under him. And this is the total net worth that that company produces, and obviously this is an average. Let's just say 40% of it goes to the workers, So this is what they earn, and they split 10% of it each. Boom, and then boom. And then the rest of it, I'll go yellow for money, goes to the boss. So this is the 60%, and let's say he takes 40%. He pays the manager 20% to manage it, right? In short, pretty much, even though it is these guys here, and maybe even the manager a little bit, who are producing all of the value within that company, the workers here only get 40% of their wealth and kind of get screwed. It's kind of like, it's the reason why everything's so shitty, why we can't afford anything, why we have, worse lives than our parents, so to speak. And then there is the current remedy to solve it, and that is forming a union. And as you all know, when you form a union, you get better pay, better benefits, and all that. That's just kind of a fact you make. I saw a statistic, like, if you were a white guy during the 70s and you were in a union, you got, like, paid $1 million more than your ununionized, like, same job, same workplace, everything else being equal. You earned literally $1 million more over the course of your career, and were able to retire earlier. So, form a union. And so in a union, workers are able to, collectively bargain and get a better deal for their labor. Let's say they're able to bargain and get up to 60%. That's about 60, yeah. And so they're able to take 60, divide it amongst themselves, just for the sake of simplicity, evenly amongst themselves. And then the last little bit, this 40% right here, goes to him. And he takes a 20% cut, and he gives his manager 20% or something like that. Again, simplified just so that we can go through quickly here. What I want to show you is what worker cooperatives can do. And it's something very, 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 very special, because most have this organization where there's the 4 workers working in a worker cooperative, but they elect their leaders. They elect their managers and the like, which means all of the money that is generated now stays with the people who produce it. 100% of it. So that means all the money that would go to, like this right here, would go to the boss or something if they were in a traditional firm, would instead go pretty much equally to the 4 workers. The manager up here might get like a slight pay increase, a slightly bigger part of the pie to compensate them for leading and stuff. But in a nutshell, there is no boss at the top taking all this money, taking all of this wealth that these people are the ones producing. And again, this is not just some far-fetched idea. Worker cooperatives can work in our current system. It is a known fact. Not just small little ones, but big, large, industrial scale cooperatives. That is the first part. Now I would like to get a little bit of facts on cooperatives, specifically how well they're currently underdeveloped in the U.S. economy. They kind of just win against traditional firms. Like, they have pretty much just a comparative advantage, 1-to-1. They are just better. Like, this report here found that they were 9 to 19% higher in productivity than traditionally structured businesses, 16 to 14% more efficient. Uh, and they also have some unique things about them. For example, when there's a downturn in the market and they're making less money, they can, because they are both worker and owners, instead of firing their fellow worker owners, which is a tricky thing in and of itself, what they tend to do is they lower pay instead of firing people. And then when markets go back up, the business cycle swings back up, they don't have to rehire people. They don't have to go through that expensive rehiring process. They're able to snap on a dime and just go back up and produce more stuff just like that. So they're more flexible, more adaptive. And studies have found that on average, overall firms, whether private or cooperative, produce more with the same amount of capital, same amount of technology as the other guys. But if they're employee owned, they just produce more stuff. They're more productive with their resources. And with their land, labor, and capital, they're just more productive with equal employment capital with more traditional firms. And at least they don't produce less. They either produce 1-to-1 or they produce more. And the reason why is, imagine this. You're in a traditional firm. You work hard and you earn the same amount of money. Like if you were on a salary or something. You work and you get an hourly wage, and then that's pretty much. And if you work hard, maybe they'll give you a raise at the end of the year. With cooperatives, if they're set up right, you work harder, you make more money because you are both the worker and the owner. You are both the person who produces all the value and the person with the legal right and entitlement to all of the profits. You don't split it with no boss, with no parasite. You don't split it with Wall Street. You don't split it with anyone. 1-to-1. Harder you work, the more you're able to sell, whether it's a good or a service, the more money you and the cooperative and your fellow workers make. So individually and collectively, your life improves. And that is something just really, really good, because it means that it's not just the owner who's constantly pushing things to get better, to be more efficient. It's every single person working there. Every single person, from the janitor to the, like, if you're producing an industrial good, to the machinist, to the engineer, to the marketer, to the making business deals with other business, whatever that job description is called. Anyone who's anyone within the business, they are all motivated and energized to make the business as successful as possible. That is the foundational cooperative advantage over the traditional firm, because the harder you work, the more money you make. And more specifically, in the current system, you don't work, you get fired. If you do work harder, you get a pizza party. But in this system, if you don't work, you'll probably get fired as well, because people don't like it when you don't pull their weight. But if you work harder, you don't get a pizza party. You get cold, hard cash, significantly more so. And we'll talk about that in just a little bit. Next, I have the solution to the cooperative problem, because what they have right now is they're kind of an unknown to people in general. And that includes banks, which means in the most capital-rich country in the history of humanity, cooperatives cannot get a loan. And that means they're basically screwed. So how do we get around that problem? I believe that we can kill two birds here, dealing with monopolies and dealing with cooperatives' inability to get capital at the same time, with the same stone. And that is by getting all the stakeholders harmed by monopoly, getting them all together and saying, hey, you give us money and we'll compete in the marketplace to break up that monopoly that you hate. And I'll give a live example right now that will look something a bit like this. So say there are A-type companies upstream, 3 of them here, who then sell their goods and services to Monopoly B, who then sells their product to people downstream, to companies C, or even to individual people, consumers. So C over here. They sell them to like grocery stores or directly to consumers. And let's say it costs A companies $9.99 to make their product, and consumers or downstream people, C-type corporations, are willing to pay $100.01 for the goods that Monopoly B provides. So what does B, with its total market power, do? With its entirely generous, they're just going to be so generous with us to make sure everyone wins here. They're going to pay A, $10 per good, and they're going to sell it to C for $100 per good. And this way, everyone wins. Everyone makes a profit. Everyone walks away happy. Except A is pissed because they're only making literally a penny in profit. C is pissed because it's literally right under what they're willing to pay, and they would like the prices be much, much lower. And so the owner, for simplicity's sake, let us just say there's one guy at the top, is able, and he has 4 workers here, that let's say he pays them $15 each, minimum wage, because he can, because he's monopoly power, pays them each $15. And let's do some quick math. So let's say, and it takes, the monopoly is able to take 5 products here and sell them 5 in 1 hour. So they're able to take 5 of the products here and in 1 hour make them available and sell them to people downstream. So 5 products in total. So that would make them $500 in revenue minus the expenses here of $50, minus 15 times 4 is 60, which means this guy here, for just sitting on his ass, doing absolutely nothing, just gets to print money and make $390 and pure profit. And for simplicity's sake, we're not going to talk about capital or any like interest on loans that he's got to pay off. For now, we're just focusing on labor. Now, A hates this. C hates this. And there are also some external stakeholders who also hate this. We got local governments who, in a democracy, let's just say they aren't corrupt and they actually represent the people. A owners and A workers and C owners, C workers, and C consumers, they are supposed to represent, and they are pissed. They do not like making so little money. They do not like being price gouged. So local govs hate this shit. They do not like it, but they kind of have to respect B power, and they can't get involved with the free market and all that. Then there are, of course, unions or unionizers, labor groups, who would love to help workers here get back some of their money that they're producing from this guy, this $390 worth of profit right here. But this guy, again, monopoly power. They can basically, they even, whispers of a union come about, they can just crush them, fire them all, and get rid of them. So these workers will forever be stuck at $15 minimum wage. And then there are the banks, who, for this example, have no stake or interest in any of these companies. So right now they're a neutral observer. But right now A is pissed, C is pissed. Local governments are unhappy with the situation because monopoly screwing everyone over, and it's kind of hard for people to get involved in the market. And these people are screwed. Workers, owners, consumers. Everyone's pissed. So they want to change it. Unions are pissed. Banks are neutral. So everyone here wants things to change. But let's say this A company tries to compete with B. B can use their monopoly power to completely, dump their product and make sure that they can't sell to C. They can use lawyers to keep them in court forever and sue them into oblivion. And so if any A or C company tried to go downstream or upstream to compete with B, most likely they just end up destroyed, because that's how much power monopoly has. So it's just not simply worth taking that risk, taking that chance to do it on their own. But they would love some competition. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is where we can come in and set up a worker cooperative. And this right here, ladies and gentlemen, this is the whole bread and butter of the presentation. This is where it comes in, because we can then turn and say, hey, A, give us a loan, and in exchange for that, we will buy your products at $20 times 5, double the price. And then we can go to C over here, to consumers and to other businesses. Hey, give us some money, give us a loan, give us capital, give us finances, and then we can sell you the product at $50 times 5. And then, after we secure this, we go to their Chamber of Commerce and say, hey, we can help you guys. We can appeal to local governments and say, hey, give us a tax break, or even a grant to help set us up. So CLICKBAIT grant. Unions and local labor are obviously on board with, worker power and all that. So they can give us technical support, tech support, and even help us set up, educate the workers on how to do in a workplace democracy. How did that even work? And they can help us with marketing and other stuff, technical support. They can help us help the worker cooperative get off the ground. And then with A giving support, C giving support, local governments giving their support, unions giving their support, all this gives legitimacy. So then we can go to the bank and say, hey, all these people think we're a good investment. How about you give us a loan as well? So with a grant, with tax breaks, with loans up and down the supply chain, with technical support, and with loans from banks, we can overcome the capital problem, because everyone wants this monopoly broken. And therefore, we can provide that service for them. And let's say we're able to hire 4 workers to equal here, and let's see what money they're making, right? So you got 50 times 5 is 250. in revenue minus the 20 times 5 is 100. And let's say to pay off the loan, the interest is $10. So that comes out to $140 in pure profit. And because this is not a traditional business, this is a worker cooperative, for now, let's just say they split it equally. That comes out, if my math is right, I'm going to double check it here, to about 35 bucks an hour. Because they take in 5, do stuff to it, and then sell it down the supply chain in an hour. Which means these workers here are now earning double, more than double, what they were before. And once they pay off the loan at 150, they can get paid 37.5. So their wages go up once they pay out the loan, of course. They make more profit, after all. Which means workers are now earning double. And of course, they have to put some of this money into like capital expenses and other stuff. There's depreciation. You got to maintain your assets and all that. But they're no longer, just another cog in the machine. They own the place they work at. So any profit that they gain does not go to some boss. It does not go to some shareholder. And once they pay out the loan, they'll be, free and clear. They will own it, and they will operate it, and they will control it in its entirety. And they get all the money that they produce and make. And that is truly something special. That is really, really good. And so that leads us to, in a nutshell, monopolies are bad. Nobody likes them. Worker cooperatives can act like drain clearers, or plumbers, if you will, which means the water can once again flow freely. And that is something that everyone desires. That is something that literally everyone but the monopoly owner, because, again, everyone wins here. I just want to go through one last time. A wins because now they're getting double the price and they got their money back from the loan. C wins because they got lower prices and left the loan. Local govs win because A is happy, their owners and workers are happy. C is happy because their owners and workers are happy. Consumers are happy, they win because of lower prices. And workers here, again, are happy. And now unions and labor, who are interested in this stuff, can now turn around and go to these guys right here and say, hey, these guys down here are earning 35 bucks an hour and doing the same exact work as you guys are. So why don't you form a union? And if this guy tries and threaten you to say, hey, screw you, you can just come work for us. Because now there's competition, you can leave and now join. So unions are happy, and banks, of course, as long as the loan's paid off with a bit of interest, they got to make their money. Banks are happy, which means everyone here is happy. And this, I believe, lays the foundation for something very, very interesting. Because monopolies exist everywhere, in all shapes and sizes. And cooperatives can exist in one shape or form or another all across the United States. I believe California, New York, Massachusetts, Illinois, and I think Colorado explicitly allow you to incorporate as a worker cooperative, but you can basically get one in all but name with an like with shares or by writing how this is we're gonna run our business, which is a democracy in all but name. So you can get around it. And when you think monopolies or oligopolies, which are just multiple firms colluding to raise prices on us, you might be thinking Amazon or you might be thinking Google, but again, they come in all shapes and sizes, ladies and gentlemen, including smaller, regional, state by state, city by city monopolies that you can go to the people that they are harming and get them a better deal. A better deal. Hell, some might even call it a new deal, if you will. Where we, the people, knowing that for the next 4 years, there's not exactly going to be a lot of anti-monopoly pro-competition now that the new guy's in charge. We, the people, kind of have to act in our own interests, take the bull by the horns, and go out there and break up those monopolies ourselves. And in the process of breaking up those smaller monopolies, I would like to talk to you all about an idea of how to continue that process and break up larger and larger and larger monopolies with 3 stories. Now, these stories will be about three things: kebab, change, and unions, or the act of forming a union. To start, we'll start with kebab. This story may or may not be true, but it works well for what I'm trying to do here. So, in the Ottoman Empire, decades and centuries before the Industrial Revolution, one inventor managed to invent a steam engine, not to mine coal, not to power a train, not to kickstart an industrial revolution, but to make kebab. And the kebab was really good. It was probably the best of its class at the time, but that technology was not used, that idea was not used to kickstart an industrial revolution. That's because it was missing two things: purpose and context. The purpose was not to make a bunch of money. It was not to, you know, make investment to then make investment to make more investments. It was to have a good kebab. And the context was the Ottoman Empire. It did not have a robust financial system, I don't believe, at the time. It didn't have the coal and iron deposits. It didn't have the property law protections, I don't believe, of English law at the time. So context was none, and purpose was none. But the Industrial Revolution did eventually happen in Great Britain, where they were able to bring about great change. And that change is the second part I want to talk about. So there are three ways to change our current broken system, and I call them the three R's: revolution, or just rev for short, reform, and the extremely rare, pretty much only happened once in human history, at least by my reckoning, reorganization. Three R's. So revolution is classic, like break the system, start anew, burn it down, and start anew. That could be like us with during our revolution. USA was founded. And other revolutions around the world. You know them. You either love them or hate them, depending on who is fighting who, of course. But classic revolutions. Reform is when you want to make the system better, but you don't want to fundamentally change it. And the apex of this was the New Deal. Now, the New Deal said, okay, we're going to work with capitalism. We're going to make it, we're going to smooth over its rough edges. We're going to ensure that unions are not only legal, but we're going to encourage their formation. We're going to break up trust. We're going to break up monopolies. And the government's going to play an active role in the market, basically act as a referee to make sure everyone's getting their fair share, the fair deal. It's the fair deal. It was the New Deal, is the fair deal. And that deal, as you probably know, has been dead for 45 years this year, half a century come 2030. And we have been feeling the effects of laissez-faire neoliberalism. It has been one heck of a time. It's why I'm at the very least talking about, building cooperatives and breaking up monopolies, because that's what the government was supposed to do, but now it's up to us to do it. And now we bring ourselves to the reorganization. And like I said, I think this has only really happened once concretely, where we went from one socio-economic system, let's just call it feudalism. This also counts for like slavery and agrarianism. And what capitalism was able to do, it was able to peacefully, so it was able to have the peacefulness of reform, but the real like fundamental change, like a whole new system, without burning down the old one. So no revolution, no violence, no forcing our way, but real change. It was a whole, well, they call it the Industrial Revolution for a reason. And that's because, like down here before, they focused on getting money. That was their purpose, and the context was a yes. There was enough capital, there was private property protection laws, there was everything. So kebab, no. First Industrial Revolution, yes. Because the purpose was to make money, so they made investments and did all that. And the context, at that specific point in time, Britain was an island separated. It had the resources, it had the legal structure, it had everything needed in order to incubate and cause the Industrial Revolution to happen, and cause a reorganization, peacefully reorganizing society from one socio-political economic system to the next. Now, I take you to the union part, the third story. And that has to do with something we Americans know very well, where the United States, well, it's states that are united. So you got California, and I'm kind of bad at drawing, so hold with me here. Texas, New York, Long Island, boom. That kind of looks like a boot. And Illinois here, just to name a few. And then Florida, whatever. And these old states got together, and because they stood together and formed the United States of America, they were able to form the most powerful nation, the most prosperous, the richest, quite frankly, despite all its flaws, I still think the best nation in the history of humanity. For better and for worse for a lot of people, because, the genocide but also the democracy, so mixed bag. You work with what you have, not with what you want. So it's because they unionized that they were able to be something greater than the sum of the parts. Because if each state went their own way, we would be far diminished, far weaker, far lesser than we are now. Same thing goes for unions of the trade union variety, whereby unionizing and forming together in a union, as mentioned earlier, you get a lot more benefits, a lot more wages, and just have a lot better life. So form a union, it's good for you. It's just smart. Then I would like to discuss with you guys a new form of union, a new form of labor organizing in the 21st century, if you will. And that, of course, is what I've been talking about all this time, where this is city, this is bigger state level, this is national, way bigger, and this one is, these are the international tech giants like Amazon, like Google, Meta, Tesla, and each of these are monopolies. They differ in size, scale, context, their markets, all that stuff. But what I see is that we are going to be able to effectively get enough capital, get enough money, to then go versus, or just arrows, to go tete-a-tete with these small city by city and maybe state by state monopolies. But if we want to take on these bigger, larger, more powerful state, national, and international monopolies, well, there is power in a union, folks, and that is exactly what I propose we do. So we form cooperatives in several states, and we gather our resources, we break those monopolies, we make some money, and then we form a new union. A union of cooperatives. Cooperative union, if we will. And then we pull our resources together, and then combined with some, going to the banks and the like, because we can't entirely fund it ourselves, it would be inefficient. We can then go and create bigger worker cooperatives, which will also be a part of the union. So we can create bigger and bigger ones that can take on the state, that can take on the national, and even, hopefully, one day perhaps, take on the international, and all of them be in one big union, industrial grand. And this would be a bit complex, a bit ambitious, that's for sure. But if we are ever to go head to head and break up those monopolies, because again, folks, our government's not going to do it, and it's up to us to, take action into our own hands, and that does not mean violence. That does not mean eating the rich, because violence is kind of bad. But this, competing in the free market, fully legally, fully peacefully, and being able to at least check their corporate power, break up their monopolies, all peacefully, all legally, in a way that is, in my opinion, a perfect mix of free market capitalism and American democracy. Because this unit, of course, would follow, would have representatives sent to a central body and all that. It would be really great, really peaceful, and non-violent way to just break their haughty power once and for all. So whenever they try in the future to make a monopoly or oligopoly or collude, this union here could step in and break it up. No government intervention required. And that leads us to here, to what I would like to call, perhaps a bit arrogantly, a second industrial revolution, where we do have purpose and we do have context. Our purpose is, yes, we want to make money, because the more money we make, the more wages, the more benefits, the better we can do. But our purpose is not just to make money, it is also to crack down on monopolies. So hammer falling down on big, I don't know, a top hat, I guess would be fine, I guess. To fall down, and not through violence, not at the end of a gun, not by iron and blood, not through the sword or the bullet or whatever, but by competing in the free market and growing and growing and growing and competing with them, we can effectively check their power. And the context, well, again, New Deal is dead. Monopolies exist at all levels of society, from coast to coast, from sea to shining sea. So the context of should we do this? Well, it's, in my opinion, kind of necessary if we are going to have a better life, a better world to live in, if not for ourselves, then at least for our children. And that leads me to the final bit of idea that I want to talk to you guys about. Because at the very least, the big idea, the dream, ambition is to create this union right here, to effectively check corporate power as an independent organization of worker owners. But what I am seeing is a potential for something even greater. It's perhaps a delusional sight, but I think it's there, where combined with the cooperative advantage, they are just more efficient. People are more motivated. They are more incentivized to work harder, smarter, better than the competition, because they know they'll make more money. Combined with the inherent weaknesses of monopolies, they might have money, but so did the aristocratic class. The aristocratic class controlled the entire wealth of the nation, and yet they were reorganized, and the nation was reorganized peacefully into capitalism. So just having money is not any guarantee of them sticking around. Where they, monopolies, have grown so fat, so lazy, so complacent, haven't faced competition in years, if not decades, where with the cooperatives being stronger and monopolies being inherently weak, especially versus cooperatives, so they are weaker. I believe, perhaps delusionally, but it's good to have dreams in these dark times, especially if you can act on them, that we could bring about a second reorganization, a second industrial revolution, where we peacefully, without bloodshed, without violence, without revolution, are able to effectively build a new economic system peacefully. I really have to emphasize peacefully, because bloodshed is bad, people dying is bad, but them suffering, being exploited is also kind of bad. We can peacefully check their power. And to my knowledge, using worker cooperatives to break up monopolies, to have them grow and be sustainable, to form a union like this, I cannot find anyone having this idea. So, if I might say it a bit arrogantly, go me. Which means this is something new. This is a new idea. Untested, unchecked, unverified. But it's something that I'm going to do. I've already taken some steps. I've reached out to my local unions and my local organization, and they seem interested by this. But it's also something you can also do. You can go to the local unions. You can go to your local labor, whatever form they may take. And you can go to them and share with them this video. You can share with them, or you can make your own presentation, your own mini marketing Monday, and you can go and convince them. And you can go to the businesses, the corporations that are being screwed over, to the local government, however corrupt they may be, and convince anyone and everyone with money and power, besides the monopoly, that it's in their own selfish best interest to break it up, and provide that service for them. And with that, we can form these small cooperatives, and together, perhaps city by city, state by state, we can form, nay, forge, a more perfect union. One that can check the power of the oligarchy, of the billionaires, of the exploiters, of the world burners, of the union busters, of the American dream killers. And we can do it all peacefully, legally, and not simply, not easily, but through hard work, it can be done. And let I remind you, we are not soldiers. We are not anyone special. I'm not anyone special. But I will tell you this. I am a worker. You are a worker. Our parents were workers. Their parents were workers, and every single generation before them were workers. And that's what we have to do. That's all we have to do in order to pull this thing off. We just got to work harder, better, and smarter than these guys who, quite frankly, spend all their time, I don't know, on a yacht, scrolling Twitter, playing Diablo 4 or whatever, and not exactly earning their pay. Which means it'd be quite embarrassing if we did, we're the experts on work, if we did fail. So, yeah. That, in a nutshell, ladies and gentlemen, is my call to action to you. Go to your states, go to the unions, and ladies and gentlemen, let's get monopoly breaking. Because if our government will not act, screw them. Let's lift ourselves up by our bootstraps, and let's get to work. That concludes this presentation. I hope you all liked it. I plan to make a couple more videos on how to make cooperatives individually more competitive. I call it my reforms in totality, making them competitive cooperatives, as well as ideas of how to make this big national union and the state unions, because it would be a federalist system, of course. It's democracy, a federalist representative industrial democracy, of course. How that would work, how we would form it, how it would operate, and how it's technically all legal. So, again, I hope you all liked what I had to say. Thank you all for listening to my yapping. And, yeah, remember, solidarity forever. There is power in a union, strength in solidarity, and the only way we're going to get through all this mess is the only way that we can, together. And since there's work to be done, let's get to work, folks. Bye. See y'all later.